Just a quick reminder before we jump in. Everything we share here is personal and subjective and meant for entertainment and educational purposes only. We reflect on patterns and dynamics from our lives, research, and what we've learned from our work. But this isn't professional advice or a substitute for therapy. When we mention people like family, friends, or exes, those references are intentionally vague or altered to protect privacy and don't reflect every person in our lives who fits those labels. Our goal is to support healing, not blame. Please check the full disclaimer in the show notes for more information.
Welcome to Self-Centered, the podcast that's all about you. We're your hosts.
I'm Allie, a therapist and life coach.
And I'm Katie, a fitness coach and personal trainer. We know what it's like to feel burnt out, taken for granted, and like your life revolves around everyone but yourself.
By learning to trust yourself, prioritize your needs, and set healthy boundaries, we help you break free from guilt, overfunctioning, and toxic patterns that keep you stuck in relationships and a life that doesn't truly serve you.
Join us each week as we dive into the tools, stories, and mindset shifts you need to create a life that centers you.
Because being self-centered isn't selfish, it's essential.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, everyone.
Welcome to Self-Centered.
Welcome to Self-Centered. Okay, so I know we're going to get to why do we call it self-centered? I want to get into it already.
I know, we want to get, there's so many things to cover, but
so
start from the beginning.
Yeah. So we're going to start with talking about why are we doing this podcast, what we're hoping that people get out of it. Yeah. So do you want to share yours first? Or do you want me to?
I'll let you go first.
Okay.
I feel like you're ready.
Well, I don't know if I'm ready. I'll just start rambling. So Katie and I met because we were roommates and now we're best friends. And we always have super deep conversations. And when we lived together, it would literally be 5 hours went by just sitting in the living room.
Our couch sessions.
Yeah, couch sessions. And none of it was planned. And we would always get deep into all these different things. But I think what kept coming up is that I think we both have a similar but different path in terms of figuring out who are we, how do we want to do life, how do we make sense of relationships, because we both didn't really get that in just our families, our experiences, the cultures and communities that we come from. And I think we've both come pretty far in experiences that each of us have had. So I'll say I really wanted to do this podcast with you because I think that you have similar but different perspectives on things. So I'm from the Northeast and you're from the South. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot that we get to learn about in terms of culture and how that impacts things, or just differences in gender roles or expectations. And that really impacts how we understand ourselves and how we understand others in relationships. And so I'm doing this with you because I think you would be a great co-host, and also because for me personally, my experiences have led me to really become an expert on understanding what disconnects people from themselves and then how that shows up in their life. So for anyone listening, are the experiences that you've gone through with people ones where they're a clear mirror where you can really see your true self, so your authentic core self, and you know who you are, you're confident in who you are, you can have healthy boundaries, you can feel and move through your emotions, all that kind of stuff? Or have you had experiences where you've had distorted mirrors, or where you never learned how to see yourself clearly, which is something that we all need. And I didn't get. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I don't think you really got. I think we're mirrors for each other.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I'm hoping for those of you who are listening that we can be mirrors for you to an extent, that you can learn about yourself and learn how to create a life that's based on who you truly are, relationships that are based on who you truly are, and that you can put yourself first and create a life that puts you first too.
Mm-hmm. To add to that, one of my core beliefs has always been trying to help people achieve their next best level of themselves.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
only way to do that is to do that for myself first, kind of like use myself as a case study. And I've always like sought after like personal development and personal growth, and whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever it is, because maybe I didn't receive that, you know, within my upbringing, within my kind of sphere of influence. So I really had to look outside of myself and outside of the people closest to me to find those things. Until of course I met you.
Yes.
This podcast as a whole is, I think, is a way for people to receive that as well, and to like, take the information and say, okay, does this work for me? Does this help me? Does this apply to me? And if it does, how can I implement it? But when I met you, it was just like, you taught me how to see, like, because I knew logically, because I had spent all this time like reading books, listening to other podcasts, you know, doing personal growth and personal development, and there was so much that I understood logically and intellectually. And just like with analyzing my world, because that is how my brain works, it's very intellectual. And then I met you, and you like brought me into this whole new world of like the emotional side of things and being connected to myself as like a soul and as a being. And I think that's a really big missing link, and one of the reasons why we're so complementary.
That's such a good way to describe it.
Yeah, is like you've connected me more to my soul, and I think I ground you in
for sure.
So we have those complementary skills. I remember when Allie and I would have our couch conversations, or even like when we were across the country from each other, we would send all of our voice messages to each other for different situations that we were like coaching each other through in our life. I would listen to them back like multiple times over and be like, oh my God, I wish other people could hear this. Because like, even if like the circumstance, of course, is always particular to ourselves, like whatever personal circumstance we're going through. But I remember there was some snippet of a conversation that we had that you had pulled, I think
about the ice.
Yeah, the ice. Yeah.
So we'll talk about that eventually, but it's basically when you've lost trust in a relationship, how do you deal with that? But we'll let that be a different podcast. You'll have to wait for another episode.
But I remember when that came up and I listened to it, and like, we've had so many of those conversations where it's like, oh my God, this is mind blowing. And like, that just makes so much sense. And it like applying it in the day to day, you're like, wow, this could totally change my life, or this could totally change someone else's life. And even just like little tidbits that you and I have worked on, and I've shared it with even my own clients and whatnot, that it's just been like, those little shifts make a big difference to people. So that's my motivation. Like, core belief of wanting to help others, but started with helping myself. And just we're like two halves to a big unit of growth.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
And what you just said, I have so many thoughts, which is why because it's hard for me to just start. You kind of help. My brain works really well with responding to things, and so now it's like, oh my gosh, that made me think of so many things, and then I can talk about it. Where just starting just there is like so hard for me. But so I think we could move into, because it's a good segue to, why are we calling this podcast self-centered? So a lot of what you just said, so about how you're very analytical, logical, and intellectual, all of that. So me too. And I also had to go through my own experiences and my own kind of like level up journey of getting more connected to myself in order to even understand my emotions. And, you know, when you talk about your soul, it's like, I think of it as like, if we can tune into ourselves, we have a compass right there. Like, that's kind of our guidance system, internal guidance system, I guess we would say. It's not a GPS. What does GPS stand for?
Global positioning system.
Oh my gosh, you even. All right, well, IGS. Maybe that could be something we coined for this podcast. But right, so like this internal guidance system, and I experience that through actually connecting to literally my experiences, which is feelings, which is sensations. And when we're in our heads and in our thoughts, obviously that's important. An important tool and important skills to have is like problem solving and thinking through things. But those are not the right tools for tuning into your internal guidance system, because your internal guidance system is in your body, like in your feelings again, and your sensations and all of that. And I'll get more into this on another episode, but because of the way that I was raised, I was taught not to tune into that internal guidance system. And have an external guidance system, which I think is really what you were talking about when you're like, oh, like, how do I do life? Like, how do I understand things? Which is honestly how like we all are. That's why we need the caregivers who raise us to mirror us. But the thing is, like, we're looking externally for guidance so that they can point us back to our internal guidance, right? And so when we're not correctly mirrored, then we don't even know that this internal guidance system exists. And so, long story short, self-centered is really about coming back to that internal guidance system, checking in with it, and then making decisions based on that. So it's like being centered in yourself.
Yeah.
And you came up with the name.
Yeah, it was so funny because like so many, it's a parallel. So many of the concepts that we'll talk about, and like, especially when you're doing the hard inner work and you are truly honoring your boundaries and you're following through with the things that honor your heart and honor your passions and support you as a person, so many people will come back and be like, oh, she's being so self-centered, she like being selfish, right?
Yes.
And people use it as a negative, but what we want is to turn that perspective on its head and be like, okay, when someone says that about you, remind yourself that you're on the right track, that you are honoring yourself, putting yourself at the center of your world and saying, how do these choices and these actions and these feelings support what I believe is the right thing for me to do.
Totally.
And I think it's so powerful too, because it gives us permission to make other people uncomfortable, not intentionally.
Oh yeah.
But just, I'm guilty of struggling with that.
Oh my gosh, me too. Yeah.
It's like, oh gosh, I don't want to say something that's going to make them, uncomfortable or unhappy with me. And then so I fail to support myself because I'm too busy supporting other people.
And what you're focusing on, or at least what I experience and a lot of my clients experience, is like, oh, I'm actually vicariously imagining what it's like to be them.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, I'm like in their minds, like I'm almost going into their point of view, literally into their body, and imagining like reading a text that I sent them. Or like when I come to say this to them, I'm visualizing the scene, but I'm visualizing it from their perspective. And I'm including, what are their beliefs? How do they interpret things? What are their experiences? How are they? And it's like, that's actually how my childhood, and like I had to do that with the people in my childhood in order to survive, which made sense at the time. But now doing it is like, oh, well, yeah, it makes sense. I have to leave myself in order to go over to someone else's experience. Imagine. And then basically every decision I'm making is based on someone else. And that's like the definition of self-abandonment. And so it's like, when you're talking about basically setting boundaries and being assertive and standing up for yourself, people will say that's self-centered. And people who are invested in you continuing to abandon yourself will never make you feel good about being like, actually, no, it's okay for me to take care of myself and put myself first. It's absolutely necessary for us to put ourselves first. It's not selfish, it's
preserving.
Preservation.
And one of the things that you and I have talked about so much that it resonates with me for who I believe the audience of this podcast will also attune to. Is people who like desperately want to be good.
Oh yeah.
And like, I
know that's us.
I know.
No, that's exactly where it comes from. Yeah.
And like, you desperately want to be good, and all of your choices, they're rooted in good intentions of like even putting yourself vicariously in the shoes of someone else. You're trying
empathy.
You're trying to be empathetic, and like we were taught that that's a good thing, and it is. But when we abandon ourselves, we let other people's verbalizations and beliefs about us, whether true or false, dictate our lives. And that's the exact opposite of self-centered. And then, as you always say, like, you get out of your chair. And that's another thing. I can't wait till we go into that in an episode. Leaving your chair. That was like something that Allie taught me that totally changed my life. But that's another episode.
It changed my life too. I mean, I think what you said about like, we have to level up first and work on ourselves first before we can teach other people. I think, and this is just a little side note. So I'm a therapist and a life coach, and you're a personal trainer. And I think a lot of the times when clients might say, oh, it wasn't a good fit with like XYZ other person, but it is with you. Part of that is just because we're a good fit, right? Doesn't mean that we're like better or worse than other people.
Yeah, personalities match.
Yeah, exactly. But sometimes I also think it's like a lot of people who are, and you have to start somewhere. So I'm also not judging this because I was there too. It's just, I think we're further along in our journeys. We have so much more to offer because we've done our personal work.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the times, if you haven't done your personal work, you can't support that experiential part of it. And so it really is only coming from your thoughts, your mind, your intellect, which knowledge is important, but it's also like, how do you process and integrate that?
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that with all of you out there listening, that we can really support you to make this your own, right? Because like, we're not here to tell you like what to do or like here's the absolute like right answer or anything. It's just more like helping you reflect on like, what is your internal guidance system, like who are you truly, and how do I get into the experience of what's going on for me so I can figure all of that out.
And I think it's empowerment too. I think so much of it is empowering you to know that like you're not alone in the thought processes, that like, you know, over analyzing what someone else's experience may be, so you don't stand up for yourself and you don't, you know, that sort of thing, or, you know, finding out like what your soul's passion is, and like navigating that experience, and that there's ups and downs that go along with that. But to know that you're not alone in that, and to feel empowered that, okay, not just us, but whoever listens to this has gone through something very similar.
For sure.
And it's like, oh,
that's a mirror.
I'm a million, you know? And if someone can do it, I can do it too. And I think, I don't know. I know people say that all the time. Well, if you can do it, I can do it too, or whatever. But
but if it resonates, if it resonates and you listening, that you see any part of yourself in us and our experiences, then you get to reflect on that and see yourself hopefully more clearly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love it.
And then just before we move on to our last topic, I do want to say, I was thinking about this, you know, the way we use the term self-centered, that it's a bad thing. And especially, and we will definitely be talking about this at some point, right? That the concept of narcissism is very much a hot topic right now in our culture, which makes complete sense to me. And we would think, oh, if you're somewhere on the narcissistic spectrum, that we would call you self-centered. And I understand why. I mean, like, that's just kind of our everyday language. I would say, I'm just going to offer, like, from the therapist perspective, just like my clinical understanding of things, that's more ego centered, right? Okay, and so we'll talk about that at some point, like what's the difference between ego, which I'll just give a little spoiler, is like a false kind of conditioned self based on our experiences, whereas yourself, the way we're talking about it, is like your core, authentic, who you truly are outside of conditions of worth and expectations and all of that kind of stuff. So I was really glad that we are reclaiming the term self-centered, but I think it will also be good for us to like distinguish what's the difference, because going back to our listeners want to be good people, you and I want to be good people. That's often what gets in the way of standing up for ourselves and being self-centered. I think we really want to distinguish, okay, so those of you listening know, okay, I'm being self-centered. That's like healthy and good, not ego-centered, which is more, I would say selfish, honestly.
Yeah, truly. And really doesn't care about the implications of what happens after choices. You know, doesn't think about anybody else in the circle, or even themselves later down the road and how those choices can affect them.
I mean, people who are ego-centered literally aren't connected to themselves. So like if and we all are somewhere on the spectrum of, you know, we all have egos and stuff like that. So again, this isn't judgmental. I mean, like if someone is listening who's like very high on the narcissistic spectrum, and it could help them too to be getting to know themselves, because the false conditional self is developed because we feel like who we truly are isn't good enough. And so it's actually good for like literally everyone to get to know themselves. But that was just a little.
I love that.
I had to say that.
I'll love it.
Okay. So our last our last topic is what are our backgrounds?
Yeah, our backgrounds. So where we started, what brings us here?
Yeah. Oh gosh, like personal, are we think because when I think about my background, I think yes, I have education. So for all of you out there listening, I am a therapist, mental health related therapist, psychotherapist, and I'm also a life coach. And yes, I have education, formal education that led to that. And so much of my personal life was also informal education.
Yeah,
so
experiential too.
We're planning on talking about both of them.
Yeah, I say we touch on them.
Yeah, she's like, don't go.
We'll be here for hours if we try to go through all of it. But
yeah, Katie helps me.
The big themes.
Okay, big themes. So big themes of the informal education of mine, so the life experience education, is I did not get to fully develop my sense of self because I was raised in a family with parents who did not have a fully developed sense of self, which is, side note, I won't go into it, but that's how trauma gets passed down, right? Especially relational trauma, complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Big words coming out here.
I know. I'm like, I like almost can't help myself. It's like an itch I have to scratch. But right, so being raised by people who are limited in their ability to really see me, really understand me. They were very much living in their heads, so they couldn't really teach me how to understand myself and my experiences and work through them. A lot of that is generational, which we can also talk about in a future episode. I think things are, Gen Z is so much more self-aware and knows how to work through things, which is awesome. But which is a change in culture. So that led me to abandon myself because I never developed my sense of self or was never really connected to who I really am. And so everything was very much that external vicarious experience of other people and what do they need from me, and really living. I remember when I was dating, I was in a 9-year relationship, and then when I got out of that, I was like, oh crap, dating, like I was actually scared of hurting someone else. I was scared of going on dates and then knowing that it's very rare that I'm going to go on one date and meet, the person for the rest of my life. So I knew that I was going to have to say, oh, this isn't a good fit for me or whatever. And it really hurt me that I would have to break people's hearts. And that's kind of how I lived my life with everyone, with my family, with my friends. And I ended up creating this life where the people who fit really well with me, I think of people as puzzle pieces, right? I was a puzzle piece where the people who fit really well with me is people who would fit really well with someone who abandoned themselves. So it was a lot of the times people who also, couldn't see me, but they had all of these needs that they weren't taking responsibility for or trying to work on their self-awareness. And I was very much basically their therapist, honestly, right? And so it got to this point where my life became so unmanageable because of the needs of the people in my life that I realized I have to set boundaries, right? This isn't a choice anymore. I have to set boundaries. So I went to therapy with that specific goal. I need to be able to set boundaries. And that led to a lot of reaction.
I just want to point out, I think it's important to acknowledge that a lot of your experiences and boundaries that you've set are working with family specifically.
Yes.
Yeah. Whereas mine were more relationships. So I want to bring that, because that are two sides.
Yeah,
listeners
for sure.
will connect more to you for family experiences.
That's true. Yeah. Yes. No, I love that. And so that was an awful time for me because setting boundaries led to increased abuse from my family, and really hurt me mentally. And I don't just mean pain, I mean literally, and we've talked about this before, cognitive impairment. Like I didn't realize, and I had been a therapist at that point, I didn't realize that mild depression is very different from moderate to severe depression. And I was severely depressed because of the trauma. And it was really, really bad cognitively. And I'm still coming back from that. My brain still does not actually like function how it used to. But what came out of that was that I then learned how to connect to myself and how to be self-centered. And by being self-centered and being assertive and setting boundaries and deciding what I am and am not available for in my life, so many people left. There were so many people filtered out.
Yeah.
And there was this emptiness and transition time to a new life. And now the life that I have is based on who I truly am and based on my internal guidance system. And I don't have toxic people in my life anymore.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And the life that I'm building now, I'm so excited about. I also noticed that when I did that personal work on myself, connecting to who I really am and becoming self-centered, I started meeting and clicking with so many people. So one of the people who got filtered out was an ex.
Yeah.
And the next person who I ended up living with, I became such good friends with. Then I lived with you and we became super close. And I just started to realize the development of the level of development or maturity, emotional maturity of the people that I was starting to connect to was so much higher than it was in the past. And it was yeah, I don't even know. I can't even describe how good it is. And I just want everyone to be able to have that. So that's my informal background, and the formal one's quicker. It's just, yeah, I'm educated for how to be a therapist, how to be a life coach.
Yeah.
And, you know, understanding the way that the brain works, understanding psychological processes, you know, does really help me personally, but then also with my clients. And yeah, so that definitely informs.
And you have experience as well, like with shamanic
Oh, shamanic.
Yeah,
Oh,
which I think is such a unique level
yeah, I love
that like
that.
I would have never been exposed to had it not been
Yeah.
for you.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up. That's so true. Yeah. So I also had a spiritual awakening. Like
Allie keeps giving me these side eyes, like,
So-
can I talk about this?
yeah, I'm gonna though. This
I
is
love
great.
it.
This is why we're doing this together, because
Yeah.
it's like there are things that I might not even think to bring up, and it might be for subconscious reasons, but then you're like, put it out there. I'm like, yeah. And the thing is, like, I want to put everything out there because it's like part of being self-centered is sharing things that if you're listening and you just heard she had a spiritual awakening and now you're thinking, oh yeah, the woo-woo bullshit, you know, like, okay, well, you know, you get to decide if I'm a fit for you. And if I'm not a fit for you, it's better for you to know that now.
And you can also open your mind and
Yes.
say, and that was one thing that I have loved doing with you is
Yeah.
like, you've exposed me to so many things that I would have never been exposed to, never would have been willing to expose myself to proactively had I not known you and known the relationship I had with you and said, yeah, I trust this gal. Like, she has good intentions and knows what she's talking about. But to like open your mind and like you as a listener and a viewer can open your mind and say, okay, I may not know much about this and I don't know if it fits my beliefs. Let me listen and be curious about it and say, does this align with me?
Right.
Would I be willing to explore this side of me?
For sure.
And you might learn a bit about yourself
that way. Yeah. I used to have an Instagram account called Evidence-Based Hippie, because I was like, how do I marry these two things? Because I'm very much, was it you who recently said if I had to describe you, it would be the scientific method or something?
I did mention that. I don't remember what that was from.
Oh my gosh.
I was sitting over there when I said it.
I know. We both have cognitive impairment from trauma.
Yeah, that one.
It is like critical thinking is so important to me. And also I think the spiritual piece, and I don't even know how to describe, like I ask myself all the time, like what the fuck even is spirituality, which again, we'll talk about that in a future podcast. But yeah, so the shamanic apprenticeship I did with a Native American woman in Vermont, it was a year-long apprenticeship, and I for sure have more to learn. But one of the things that I learned is that from a spiritual perspective, I'm what's called a psychopomp, which is I am connected to lost souls, whether they have a body or not. So they could be living or not living, maybe never even, you know, had a body on earth, or they've passed. And it just made a lot of sense of my experiences. But it's interesting because from a shamanic perspective, soul loss is what happens when you go through trauma, and soul loss is self loss.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. Like soul loss is like not being connected to yourself.
Yeah.
And it's basically, and I will just do a quick nutshell. It's basically just that when you go through trauma, that one of the factors of it, identifying or being defined as trauma is that you weren't capable of processing it in the moment, or, fully handling it because it was, too big, or just based on the level of capacity or skills that you have. And what can happen is we dissociate, right? We disconnect from the experience. And when that happens from a shamanic perspective, that part of our soul like goes and like hides somewhere, basically, and we don't have access to all of the qualities of that part of your soul. And so I think it all aligns, because it's like, okay, yeah, lost souls are people who are not connected to themselves. And so it's really about, I think there's just these like multiple layers and levels, that this is the work that I'm here to do. Yeah, and I'm so excited to be doing this.
Excited
oh
too.
I'm getting a little emotional.
We're all giddy. It's so cute.
Yeah. Okay, and so Katie, tell us about your background.
Yeah. So Allie's, I don't know, I'm thinking about mine. I'm like, gosh, Allie sounds so fucking interesting.
No, I think if you just start talking.
We'll see where it goes. Okay, so I mean, I grew up in a very conservative life. I was born in the South. I lived in Texas and Florida, and my parents were very conservative, not terribly religious, but lots of religious undertones.
Yeah.
And they both grew up from very religious backgrounds, Methodist and Lutheran, which was Catholic light essentially.
Catholic light.
Yeah. And then as a young adult, or not even a young adult, but as an adolescent, I should say, I became very religious myself by choice. Because I had moved to a new town, and essentially the first person to like befriend me was someone that was very religious. And I kind of fell into that people group as a way to feel accepted and belonging when I didn't have friends, and a very developmental part of my life.
Yeah.
So essentially, I had this very strong religious upbringing, brought me into this relationship with someone that, long story short, turned into an abusive marriage.
Yeah.
And certainly has been a lot to work through.
Yeah.
I always feel like I have to quantify this, but there wasn't like excessive physical abuse. We're talking I know. We're talking more emotional abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, and financial abuse. So, to give context.
Yeah. And I think that type of, why do you say that? I'm curious.
I say that because I don't want people to think that I am trying to like blaspheme someone in a specific, because if you were from the South and you heard me say I was abused, you're going to immediately think of my ex-husband as someone who hits people. And that's not correctly portraying the picture of that. And I do
want to portray it accurately.
And that is something, of course, I have constantly worked through, is I am intentional about making sure that people understand exactly what my meaning and my words are trying to convey, because I don't want to be misunderstood, because that can be taken out of context.
For sure.
But yeah, so that was important for me to distinguish. And I think it also changes my approach to relationships of what my fears are.
Yes.
Because I'm not worried about getting hit. Like that. And the second that there was anything physical was so clear to me, oh, this is no longer healthy.
Yes.
Time to get out.
From a psychological perspective, it's a lot, it's concrete. It's more, it's black and white. Exactly. So it's, whereas those other forms of abuse are more subtle. And so it's easier to doubt yourself.
And those areas, especially growing up in a very conservative religious background, those areas were the things I was not educated on from my support network, from my family, from my church, from my friends. I was never taught about safe sex. I wasn't like, aside from, the so silly, but like the Barbie and Ken, this two, like, it's so ridiculous. These two like Velcro gloves that, when you have sex, you're Velcroing these two sides together. And if you guys have sex without marriage, then you're ripping them apart. It's painful. Like, such a weird analogy.
Wait, where did you learn that?
In Texas, in my elementary school. That was how that was our sex ed.
Oh,
yeah, so crazy. That should be another podcast.
Oh gosh, okay, yeah.
But so my experiences have a lot to do with growing and healing through emotional abuse, through trying to grow through the PTSD that I experienced following sexual assault, unfortunately, and also rebuilding my life as a business owner and learning to stand and trust my own self. One of the like biggest challenges for me in leaving my relationship was like so much of my upbringing had been like dependency on people in a sense of like, okay, I'm, depending on the church to like approve this relationship.
Yeah.
Depending on, my husband to agree, with whatever the next choice that I made or whatnot. And then
like you need permission for
kinda,
everything or
yeah.
like approval.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have, the blessing of someone else, or if I offended someone else, or if I made them uncomfortable, like I just I can't do that.
Yes.
Right? So I really set myself aside for the needs and comforts of others. But then the main reason I ended up leaving that relationship and had the wherewithal to leave an unhealthy situation was because I truly was ready to kill myself.
No, that's
which is
same
like,
with me. Oh my gosh. Yes.
It's so it's scary, but it was like it was the wake up call that I was like, oh, this isn't just in my head. Like this is actually, if someone is causing me so much harm that I am ready to physically harm myself, that's probably a sign I need out. And that was really kind of the catalyst that caused me to change my life. And mind you, like amidst all, yeah, I know. Yeah, that was
same with me too, though.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
And along the way, of course, I was seeing things in my relationships that I was like, gosh, this seems like a really not good thing. Let me work on that. And that was what brought me into personal development. It's like, okay, how can I improve myself to show up for this relationship better? Because I feel like we're struggling in this area, whether it was like sex or it was communication or, I had made efforts to try to be better from an intellectual standpoint and like learn all the things so that I can come to this situation, come to this relationship, or support parents or whatever better. And it doesn't pan out because I wasn't honoring myself. That's kind of my informal background. I mean, there's certainly some family things with parents that weren't emotionally attuned, and that's different. But most of mine is relative to relationships with an emotional partner. An emotional, romantic relationship. That's the word.
Yes.
For the not so formal or not so informal, the formal part, the formal part is I have a background in business. That's part of why I'm so analytical. Business and finance were my education formally. I went into banking for a while and then I hated it, and then I ended up becoming a personal trainer after like just a personal growth. And I was like, okay, I need fitness in my life because I feel like shit. So ended up becoming a personal trainer, and because I'm so detail oriented, it just kind of blossomed into sports performance training, into working with high level athletes. And then, the heart for people, it was like, okay, let's start working with, moms who just want to get back into shape, or like business people who just have a crazy schedule. And I just connected on so many layers with people who didn't feel like they were understood for so long, not just because of like the physical things that they needed, but more so because I asked them to consider the big picture. Because what I observed in my physical health journey was that, okay, well, I can't just exercise for the sake of exercising. There is a mental component that's going on. If I'm stressed in my life, if I'm dealing with things, that's hindering. There's a holistic picture. And that was a lot of what started connecting me with these clients was, oh, you're asking about my life. And if you can't show up in your life, you're not going to show up in a workout. And I hear this all the time, and I'll debunk it all the time. Exercise is not therapy. It's a tool, and we can use that tool to our benefit, but
it complements therapy.
It does. It complements therapy, but I encountered so many people that were treating it as their only form of therapy. And, we had to kind of bring them back and say, hey, like, we need to address these bigger roots. I can't do that with you personally because that's not my scope of practice, but like, understand that there's something bigger going on, and take time to pause and reflect on this and seek out the help and support that you need. So that was kind of my formal segue, because I personally learned it myself. I was able to support my clients on that.
Well, and I've been a client of yours when I lived on the same coast.
For sure.
And one of the things that really struck me, because I was doing group fitness with you, and I've done group fitness with others, and the difference was really, for you, it was what's your why? What's your bigger reason? What's your non-scale or non-number related goal? And so it is really about that, personal growth and development, and that, you know, the physical piece can also be used as, or maybe this was just the way that I took it being who I am, but like that the physical piece can be used as almost a vehicle to also work on your personal development, which yes, is not therapy.
Yeah.
But you're still going to come up against mental hurdles and need to work through those.
Yeah.
And that's something that you really incorporated instead of, and in a holistic, I think more authentic way to what people need compared to what I've heard in a lot of group fitness, which is just, you can do anything, like for 1 more minute, or, you know, just push yourself, just hustle. And there's a lot of, and obviously this isn't my scope of practice, but I know from clients who are athletes who can sometimes overdo it and use fitness as a way to avoid, and it almost becomes like self-harm. But you're more than just physical is really what I'm trying to say. It's also about the internal growth as well. Yeah. There was something that you said too. I think it was, well, I'll just start talking and then we'll figure out how to connect it to what you said, because I don't remember exactly what you said, but what you were saying, whatever it was, made me think about taking responsibility, right? And that, so you were saying that in your relationship, it was like, oh, I need to work on myself and figure, you know, myself out because like this relationship isn't working. So I need to improve myself. And that's also something that can happen. I've done that too. Taking responsibility is really healthy when you take responsibility for your part. And it just reminded me to say that often those of us who abandon ourselves, right? So when we're not self-centered, when we're not staying in our seat, we are taking too much responsibility, right?
Which I had certainly been guilty of for so long.
Right. Yeah. And so it's really great that, you know, we're both into personal development, and part of our journey of getting to where we are now in a more healthy, self-centered place is that we over functioned and we became over responsible, right? It's like, okay, well, I can grow, I can learn, I can take on responsibility for this. And I think part of becoming self-centered is also recognizing when I can't do, I can't do this. Yeah. Like, stop.
Not my cup to hold.
Yeah, exactly. And could I do it? Am I capable? Yeah, probably. I mean, we're high functioning.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the times people who are high functioning end up actually carrying way too much. And the people, at least the clients that I have who are high functioning and then are struggling and like, I need therapy. And I'm saying therapy specifically because usually then when you lose functioning, that's what therapy is for, right?
Yeah.
But usually those clients who were once high functioning, it's almost like they took on so much. And it was when they were asking themselves, okay, can I do this? Can I not? It was basically like, will I die?
Yeah.
And if I won't die, I'll do it. If it'll hurt my physical health, my mental health, if I'll be exhausted, if I'll lose money, I'll do it because I quote unquote can. But then that's like another way of losing yourself. So I think that's also part of the journey that we'll be talking about, and that you can really, both of us can really speak to, is like, okay, we like ended up over functioning, and then how do you figure out, okay, I can't do that, meaning I'm not going to sacrifice myself. I'm not going to abandon myself. How do I stay self-centered?
Yeah. So good. I think one thing that I want to verbalize, because I think especially in the personal in the personal growth world, and especially with the rise of social media and curated experiences, this can often get lost. Allie and I are still actively working on ourselves.
Oh, yes.
And that's something to
I'm so glad you said that.
It's something to be mindful of, especially when it comes to being self-centered and when you're taking away things from this podcast.
Yes.
Is you're never going to arrive.
No.
But you will always continue to find a new level of yourself if you're making putting this into practice. And so we have come out of such like crazy,
oh my gosh,
deep, dark holes
yes,
that we're like, oh my God, look at this new life I've arrived at. And there's still more levels to be had. And so don't look at our lives and be like, oh yeah, well they've just, now that they learned how to be self-centered, they never have negative people enter their lives. They never allow these, like we are still growing day by day and still have to remind ourselves of the principles that we've talked about, that we've discovered and we've worked through. And it's an ongoing process. And there are times when we go backwards and we say, oh, that was old Katie coming into the picture and she was making a choice that's not going to actually serve her.
Right.
And then we have to kind of like recollect and say, okay, even as me and my new self, I made that mistake, time to move forward. And I can learn from this again, and I can recognize it so much easier. For sure. And I think that's kind of the highlight of the more work we've done, the faster it is to recognize and the faster we can course correct and say, oh, okay, that's not for me. I'm getting out of my chair. Let me go on and get back in my chair and do the things for sure.
Yeah, I will say that. So yes, and thank you for saying all that. I will say that I also do have confidence that I will never go back to those lower places.
Yes.
So that's something that I can say, like, there is a new floor almost, like, like I'm not gonna sink, like I have like raised up enough and learned enough that like there's just like I'm not gonna go lower than this in my life. Like I know that for sure. And I know that over time we're gonna keep developing. But yes, it is a practice. It's basically like,
and we're not here preaching we're perfect.
Definitely not.
That's a lot of what,
definitely not. And no one's perfect. So it's really about like, we have to recognize that. And
so don't put us on a pedestal.
Don't put us on a pedestal.
Learn from us.
Learn from us, but like make it your own. But I think fitness is a really good analogy for that, because you can get to a place through a training program where you're in really good shape and you feel really good and amazing. And then because life is life, things can happen and there's different priorities. Like there's different seasons in life. And so, sometimes you're going to be like, okay, this is my goal. Like right now, I'm just starting to get back into fitness because I'm figuring out how to manage this chronic migraine disorder that I have without triggering it so much that then it stops, me from being able to work out, and I tend to go harder, go home, and then I have to go home because I went hard. So, because that's how it goes with chronic illness. So it's like, okay, like, but what I do know is that there are these practices, right? There's like strength training. I can work with you. You can understand me as an individual and help put me through a program where we do it in the way that works for me. And so it's like, this isn't about arriving at some place where you're perfect. And then just being the same or anything like that. It's more, I feel so confident that I have these principles. I have these things that I've learned, these capacities that I've created in me. I'm sure you feel the same way or similarly, that it's like, I know that no matter what happens, I can fall back on that. And not only that, the life that I've created now that reflects who I really am and actually supports who I am is now a resource for me that I didn't have before. I have you. I didn't have you before. And you are a clear mirror for me and you do ground me. And so now I'm not so alone as I was before. And so there are so many things that you can look forward to. And I'm saying you, the listener, in doing this work. So there are so many positive things that you will get to experience as you make this your own. And yes, like it isn't like you just arrive somewhere. Then
you get a great toolbox from all of this.
Exactly. Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
So I think we covered all the topics. Do just want to provide a general disclaimer. Although we have some practical knowledge and information in terms of therapy backgrounds and personal health backgrounds, anything that we say here is not meant to be medical advice. Please feel free to talk to your doctor and to double check on this.
This is not therapy.
This is not therapy. Seek out the appropriate resources. We're always happy to, help guide. Oh, you're dealing with this problem. Maybe go check out this, professional who can tell you about your specific situation. Right. But do your due diligence. We're here to share our experiences and what's worked for us. And hopefully you glean something from that you can apply to your life.
Yes, but we are not telling you what to do.
Nope.
Or what not to do.
Nope. No prescriptions here.
You are fully responsible for your own decisions. Yep. And that is on being self-centered.
Yep.
All right. Well, we will catch you in the next episode. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Follow us on Instagram at selfcentered.pod or connect with us at selfcenteredthepod@gmail.com.
Stay self-centered, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Peace.
We can edit a lot of that.